All right, let's unpack this. Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into something really extraordinary, the conceptual world of the prevailing air. It's a reconstructed late period novel attributed to Henry James. But we're not talking about his familiar world of, drawing rooms and delicate manners.
Exactly. We are looking at a novel set in the absolute firestorm of World War I, specifically 1915 and 16. The sources show us James, the master of subtle perception and internal life, being profoundly, violently shaken by the sheer scale of the catastrophe.
So, our mission today is to figure out what happens when that exquisite Jamesian focus on individual consciousness is dropped into an abyss of blood and darkness. Can an intensely internal philosophy hold up when the external world is shattering itself? We have a stack of sources detailing the plot, the characters, and this profound, almost mystical philosophy that runs through the whole narrative.
And it's a crucial question because James himself described the war as the plunge of civilization into this abyss of blood and darkness. Before this, his whole literary project was about the dissolution of event into consciousness.
Right. The idea that what matters is not the external fact, but the quality of attention we bring to it.
Precisely. So when the fact is a global slaughter, can just paying attention be enough?
That sets the atmosphere for the novel beautifully, and atmosphere is everything here. We meet the protagonist, Clement Verver, an American, 63 years old, who arrives in London, and the sources emphasize that his consciousness arrives late. He is physically present, but spiritually and mentally he's delayed.
That late arrival immediately signals that the world has, moved on without him. And this is where the title, The Prevailing Air, takes root. When Clement finally settled, he notices the fire in his room, the classic symbol of warmth and welcome, offers a melancholy insufficiency.
Melancholy insufficiency. I love that phrase.
It's giving off heat, but it knows it's inadequate to the chill of the moment.
It's such a perfect symbol for the entire old world. Everything is operating at a diminished capacity, kind of running on fumes. The sources suggest Clement came because he felt he had to, attend upon this death, though he didn't quite know how.
He arrives looking for a reason. He fled America because, as we find out, he could no longer bear to remain in a place where the old categories still obtained. A place where people were still pretending the comfortable, rational world of, say, 1912 was recoverable. He needed a new truth.
And the person who immediately gets that, who sees his real reason for being there, is Charlotte Bradham. She's the initial guide. She's a friend of his late sister, and she just cuts through his Jamesian fog of indirectness instantly, doesn't she?
She does. And this is where we can extract a major philosophical nugget. The old Jamesian moral code, the one from his pre-war novels, was all about choosing one's manner or style when facing adversity.
So if you were ruined, at least be exquisitely graceful about it.
Right. But Charlotte presents the new reality. Is an exquisite manner enough to redeem the matter when the matter is so dark, so intractable, and exists on a global scale?
That's a powerful distinction. It feels like she's saying, we spent our lives polishing the form, and now the content is pure horror, and the form can't even touch it.
And that old confidence,
Yeah.
the belief that the world was rational and comprehensible, was revealed as merely the air we breathed, a comfortable illusion that just vanished.
So the goal shifts. It's not about mastering your outward style anymore, but your inward state. And this brings us to the central practice she introduces, attending. Clement is initially just passive. He's simply attending to the fire.
Yes, but what's the difference? How does she transform that passive observation into this active, demanding discipline?
Well, she emphasizes that attending, or attendance, is the rigorous, sustained direction of consciousness toward what is present without requiring it to be other than it is.
It's a total acceptance of reality in that moment. So think of it less like watching a fire and more like being a blacksmith tending the forge. You have to be absolutely present, constantly adjusting, feeding it. It's effortful.
So it's not just acceptance, it's an active discipline of refusal. Refusing to let your mind drift into judgment or wishful thinking or denial about what's actually happening. That fire, the symbol for consciousness, it requires constant tending or it just goes out. It sounds exhausting.
It is costly. And that cost leads us seamlessly into the next layer of the novel. If this level of attention is the discipline, the next question is, who is practicing it and what are they practicing with?
And that takes us to section 2 and the introduction of the second key figure, Marcus Dowell. He is the novel's wounded healer, a young former lieutenant who was, completely broken by the horrors of the trenches.
Marcus is crucial because he offers a consciousness that has been forcibly stripped of illusion. Clement is arriving late. Marcus is already seen through to the other side. If Clement represents the theoretical awareness of the war, Marcus is the physical, psychological trauma of it. His presence just grounds everything in mud and shell shock.
And it's Marcus who explains Charlotte's really radical goal, which is a new way of being that doesn't rely on the old self, the idea of oneself as a bounded, coherent, continuous thing.
Right, this concept that yourself was always a functional illusion, necessary for society maybe, but now it's just irrelevant and shattered by the war.
This is the concept of dissolution. And to be clear for you listening, this isn't nihilism. The sources really emphasize it's not the annihilation of the self, but the recognition that the self is a process, a flow, like a wave, not a fixed particle.
And if you stop trying to maintain the illusion of a fixed, separate thing, you free up a huge amount of energy to practice this attending.
That's fascinating. It's almost a spiritual survival mechanism. If the old story of who I am is based on a world that no longer exists, you have to let go of the narrator. But if the individual self is dissolving, the work can't be solitary, can it?
It cannot. The work, which is the umbrella term for this whole spiritual enterprise, demands a collective effort. They perform it in a circle. They gather in a room beneath a warehouse in the East End, a humble, concealed space, and they just sit together.
And this isn't a church or political group, is it? It sounds very non-dogmatic.
That's the key. It's not an organization or a doctrine. It's a shared practice dedicated to cultivating consciousness as ground.
Consciousness as ground. What does that mean exactly?
Think of consciousness less as a lamp you carry, and more like the Wi-Fi signal in a building. It's the fundamental medium in which all experience arises, not just a product of your individual mind. They're trying to tap into that shared ground.
So they're attempting to access a collective fundamental awareness, and the practice they focus on is the threshold.
The threshold is the boundary point where the inner world and the outer world meet. When you are fully attending, that boundary reveals itself as permeable. The war has forced a trauma through the self, and now they are attempting to consciously open that door, recognizing that the self is part of a larger medium.
Now, this protected deep space of the circle is, well, it's violently challenged in Section 3, the eruption. The sources make this the dramatic turning point.
Yes. The outside world is not going to politely wait for their internal work to finish. The silence and the focus of the circle are shattered by the sounds of Zeppelin raids bombing the East End. The material catastrophe literally penetrates their spiritual sanctuary.
The tension here must be immense for the reader. Can their philosophical work remain purely separate from the suffering right outside their window? This forces Charlotte to escalate the work.
She forces the group to address the suffering by asking them to become a vessel. They have to receive, acknowledge, and transform the world's suffering by focusing their collective consciousness on it. But this comes with a heavy moment of vulnerability for Charlotte. She reveals her own failure.
Wait, if the work is so powerful, why did she fail? I mean, she was trying to use this internal discipline to prevent the war. That's a massive scale to attempt.
It was. She admits she tried to apply the work directly to the social and political sphere years earlier, believing she could dissolve conflicts before they escalated. But she failed completely. The war came anyway. She realizes that the human forces driving conflict were too massive, too intractable for her intention to overcome directly.
So it was a recognition of scale. She shifts from trying to stop the hurricane to trying to plant something small in the wreckage.
Exactly. Her focus narrows. She realizes she was left only to salvage something from the wreckage and to plant seeds. The possibility of future, slower growth, not immediate political intervention. It was about adding a small push against the overwhelming darkness.
And that sets up the ultimate climactic experiment of the novel, projection. Having recognized their inability to prevent external events, they decide to consciously project their cultivated consciousness outward, toward a specific, terrible target.
This is huge risk. They pool their collective awareness and extend it beyond the room. It's far more than mere imagination. They are claiming actual, active contact with the suffering world.
And the target, guided by Marcus's memory, is just harrowing the trenches in France. What do the sources say about the experience of this projection?
It's described with incredible sensory weight. Clement finds himself suddenly experiencing the sensory actuality, the smell of mud and cordite and rotting flesh. They weren't passive observers floating above the trenches. They were in the trench, consciously adding their attention to that place.
They were refusing to look away from the absolute worst place on earth at that moment. The sources describe it as praying with their presence, but here's the most Jungian part. Does it work? Does this projection have any material effect?
The novel deliberately maintains a radical ambiguity here. Marcus, the one who knows the trenches best, immediately wonders if the projection works, if they opened a door or a wound. James refuses to answer. You can't measure a spiritual increment with a material yardstick. The effectiveness is left radically open.
It forces you, the listener and Clement, to confront the nature of faith. If you do this immense, costly spiritual work, you have to accept that you may never know the result.
And that acceptance comes with a price. In Section 4, we see the cost of this expenditure. It wasn't just physical tiredness after the projection.
No, the exhaustion is immediate and severe, a depletion that reaches a deeper metaphysical level. Charlotte admits that the work has accelerated her illness, that she drew upon reserves she didn't have the right to use. It's as if their act of radical presence required an equally radical sacrifice of their own vital energy.
They experienced the constant pull back to the trenches in their dreams. Marcus especially felt he'd been permanently marked by the connection they made. The cost is surrendering the very comfort and coherence that the old fixed self provided. You become porous to the world's suffering.
And Charlotte, facing her own imminent death in April 1916, must secure the future of the work. She names Clement, the late arrival, as her successor in this final transmission. Why Clement, the intellectual observer, and not Marcus, the wounded catalyst?
She explains that Marcus's role as the wounded healer makes him essential, but too porous and traumatized to lead. He's the raw material, in a way. Clement's specific contribution is his capacity for attention, his meticulous, long-developed ability to witness and to hold complexity. He has the strength to hold what cannot be held.
It's the ultimate validation of the Jamesian sensibility, isn't it? The quality of attention is the highest virtue, and it makes him the only person capable of leadership.
And Charlotte's final teaching before her death is beautiful. She tells Clement that the work is not something to be mastered or completed, but a relationship that must be continued. Her final gift is presence itself, the capacity to be fully available to what is without needing it to be other than it is. That's what she transmits to him.
And Clement accepts the role. The sources tell us he guides the circle, continuing the practice faithfully, long after James himself died, until Clement's own death in 1937. The physical place of the circle, that room beneath the East End warehouse, is eventually destroyed in the blitz of the next war.
But the work survives the structure. It persists in the quality of attention that certain persons bring to their experience. It becomes a legacy of practice, not place.
So if we synthesize the ultimate message from these sources for you, the listener, the prevailing air offers a stunning template for survival in a collapsing world. It is survival achieved not through physical or political action, but through the difficult, disciplined cultivation of an internal state.
It takes the very Jamesian exploration of inner life, the quality of perception, and moves it beyond individual psychology into the realm of shared, impactful consciousness. The profound takeaway is the distinction between work that is meant to solve large-scale problems, which Charlotte failed at, and work that is meant to be present to them.
The work is not meant to be enough to fix the war or the civilizational failure, but it is enough to be present to the suffering, adding that small increment to the sum of light in the universe simply by refusing to look away. That's the measure of its efficacy.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought, which echoes the reconstructed novels afterward. The text itself functions as a transmission to the reader, much like Charlotte's teaching to Clemos. It offers no certainty or tidy conclusion, only an invitation to be present to the complex horror, the profound internal work you have encountered. So the question is, can a work of fiction, through its sheer style and rigorous attention, genuinely function as a spiritual transmission? And what is the true personal cost of bringing that uncompromising level of attention to your own life right now? That's the question this deep dive leaves you with.